What's happening?
Hey, Dave.
Chris, what's going on, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. We are the 8-Bit Jobbers.
We are the 8-Bit Jobbers.
We've decided this.
And we're going to see where that takes us.
Yes, we've decided this.
We are in your basement.
Yep.
And we're having a drink.
We are.
And we're having a good time.
Yes.
I think we've had a good day.
Yeah.
Or I have, at least. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's been fine. We worked out some technical things, and we got a rig and some technology working for us.
Yeah, so
feeling pretty good.
We're here, and we are going to have a little discussion.
That's right.
I think, as we talked about before, you and I are going to talk about our top 5 favorite wrestling games.
That's right.
Because you and I have played wrestling games for years. Wrestling games is something that you and I know, that you and I love, and I think we need to talk about this because we've talked about this before, plenty of times. And you and I assume, have played our fair share of wrestling games.
Well, we have. I mean, I've been playing wrestling games since I was a kid. I'm 31, something like that now, and playing wrestling video games since the early days of the Nintendo, all the way to currently PlayStation 4, Xbox One.
Right.
And it's something that I've always been passionate about from the day that my dad brought me a copy of WWF magazine with Hogan on the cover, draped with the American flag over his shoulder.
Right.
The red, white, and blue. Dropping legs and kicking ass in the middle of the ring. Inside that magazine, I was hooked. Mm-hmm. So I instantly became a wrestling fan, and I instantly became a wrestling video game fan. Because, come on, I was a child of the 80s. I grew up on the Nintendo.
Sure, yeah. And I was... I don't know if I necessarily... Well, yeah, I suppose... Would I be considered a child of the 80s? I was born in 85.
That means you're a child of the 80s.
Am I? Okay.
What are you a child of?
Well, okay, because when somebody says that they're a child of a specific decade, I like to think of that as, okay, so sure, you were born, or rather, I was born in 85. I don't remember anything that happened to my life, like, up until when I was like maybe 5 or 6 years old, when I was already in the early 90s.
I think you could figure it out. I mean, if you had a conversation with your mom or something, she'd probably tell you. And it triggers something, you'd remember.
I suppose so, but...
So when did you first play the Nintendo?
When I first played the Nintendo... Oh, that's a good question. Okay, all right, so that may be a good point, because when I first played the Nintendo, I was still living in South Chicago Heights, and my aunt lived below me in the same... It was a house split into 2 apartments. So I moved out of that house into Chicago Heights when I was... it was when I was still in 1st grade, so probably when I was 5, maybe.
It might have been the 90s.
Maybe 4. So it was probably maybe 89, probably 90.
Well, the NES came out in 89.
Okay, so it was probably 1990 then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 1990 is probably when I first played the NES.
Yep.
The very first game I ever played for NES was the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
First game I played was absolutely Mario.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So... We are children of the 80s. I mean, you call a spade a spade. We were both born in the 80s. And much like many of you who may be listening, we were hooked onto video gaming immediately. And it has greatly affected our lives. I mean, I'm in the video game industry. Chris is in the video game industry. Whether we are making games, publishing games, marketing games, selling games, putting the plastic on the game, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, we're both in the same industry.
We're both in the same
that.
industry, and we love it. It's something we've been very passionate about. And again, since I was young, very passionate about pro wrestling. It's something that will stay with me probably forever. So we decided to birth a podcast, birth a webcast, and here it is.
Yep, here we go.
We have donned ourselves the 8-Bit Jobbers.
I think the 8-Bit Jobbers is very clever.
Yeah.
I think I don't know about you. I see myself as being a jobber in everyday life.
Yeah.
I'm not that good, but I don't know what I'm not doing at the same time. I know what I'm doing. I just don't know if I'm doing it good. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
You need a new boss then. They're not
Oh,
telling
yeah.
you if you're doing a
Hey,
good job or not.
I need a new something. You know what I'm talking about.
So
yeah.
if you look at the definition of jobber as it relates to wrestling, right? It's the guy who does the job.
Right.
Sometimes he's the unsung hero,
Right.
He is the guy that makes your superstars, your heroes look good. And we are very much those guys. We work hard. We work hard for what we have. Much like many of you that are hopefully listening to this podcast. I say hopefully because, it may be 7 people that listen to it. And this may end up in the garbage. Hopefully not.
Well, I hope not. And if it is in the garbage, I hope somebody finds it and they continue it because I think it's a good idea.
It'd be like a movie. Like
Yeah.
somebody like this kid's like it's like 2072 and the
Yeah,
kid like
exactly.
just
What?
rummaging through a
8-bit jobbers. What's
garbage
this?
heap.
Oh wow! I think I might keep going with this. This
And he
is
finds
incredible.
a Zoom recorder
Finds a Zoom
with-
H5
with
handy
a
recorder.
with a notebook that says 8-bit jobbers, and he's like, "What the hell is this?"
yeah,
and
that's-
it changes his life.
yes.
And what happens to him?
And he hears it. He hears all the recordings that's on it, and
It's a terrible movie.
he
They're never gonna make
he
this.
thinks this is absolutely awful garbage. I think I
Yeah.
could do it better.
And he does his own podcast.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
So there it is.
hey, that's fine. The kid who found our podcast.
Great. We inspire somebody in the future.
Hopefully to do better than what we were doing. So, hey, we're going to give this a shot.
Yes,
We're going to
give it a
have some
shot.
fun doing it. We talk about this stuff all the time. We like to reminisce these things. In fact, just last weekend or 2 weekends ago, during the Royal Rumble, we were reminiscing about some of these games, and we busted them out.
Yep.
And that inspired us to talk about our top 5 favorite wrestling video games.
Can we talk about though when I say the term or when you hear the term jobber?
Yeah.
Who do you think of in terms of a person?
Barry Horowitz.
Okay.
Do you remember that guy?
Kind of.
Okay. You'd recognize him if you saw him. So
I'm sure I would.
He had a mustache, and he had like a mullet, and he had this. His singlet that he wore was all neon because he was in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
And he also, I believe, he was Jewish, so he had the Star of David, the star on his trunks, on his ring jacket, lots of sparkles, and he would go like this, and he'd pat himself on the back. That was his gimmick.
I remember him.
Remember
Yeah,
that guy?
I
So
remember
Barry
him.
Horowitz, he would pat himself on the back, basically because he was a jobber and nobody else was patting him on the back. That's kind of where, at least I think the inspiration was from. He could pat himself
Okay.
on the back for
All right.
a job well done, and that's Barry Horowitz.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about you?
Brooklyn Brawler.
Oh, he's classic.
Brooklyn Brawler. Brooklyn Brawler. I feel like he is the personification, the human, physical personification of the everyday man.
Yeah,
The working guy who gets
Yeah.
up in the morning, or woman,
yeah,
gets up in the morning, goes to Dunkin' Donuts,
yeah.
gets a coffee,
Holes in their
gets
jeans.
a donut, says good morning, hops back in their car or their bus or their train. Let's go.
Yeah.
9 to 5. Let's do it. Brooklyn Brawler. Brooklyn Brawler was one of the first wrestlers I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Next to the Undertaker. I
Yeah.
don't remember who he was. He must have been wrestling some other even more unknown jobber, and he would show up every now and then when he was still going, when he still had it, and I'll be like, "Oh, Brooklyn Brawler! I kind of like him. I wish I saw more of him." Obviously
we should YouTube Brooklyn Brawler versus Barry Horowitz
sure
and
yeah.
see if that ever happened.
Sure, yeah.
All right,
yeah.
during the break we will check on that.
Okay, great.
All right, so you want to kick this off?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, all right, here we go. We're going to talk about our top 5 wrestling video games of all time. And we're going to ask you to get involved too. Our listeners, our community. And hopefully we spark a rise up of the 8-bit jobber. So if you're a fan of retro video games, if you're a fan of wrestling video games, if you're a fan of retro vintage wrestling, if you're a current fan of wrestling, I would ask you to join the 8-bit jobber revolution. Join us. Follow us on Twitter.
At 8-bit jobbers.
Yes. Send us your top 5. Send us what we got right. Call us out on what we got wrong.
Sure, yeah. I would love to hear everybody else's opinions. I'd like to hear why I'm an idiot for listing what I'm going to list. I like to hear everybody's opinion on why they agree. So I think we should get that conversation started.
All right. Well, sounds good. Chris, do you want to kick it off with your number 5?
Absolutely.
Go for it.
My number 5. And now that I think about it, I don't remember which other wrestling games were on the original Xbox. The original Xbox was powerful hardware at the time. I'm telling you, it was. It was good. This series I picked up both games. The first one I really liked. I didn't think the second one was going to be good, but I thought I'd give it a try. The second one being WWF Raw 2, number 5 on my list of the top 5 wrestling games. WWF Raw 2, it was developed by Anchor, who was just getting into the industry at the time. And the game was published by THQ. This game is on my list because of its extreme detail to character models. Now,
the game looks great when you look at it now.
The game looks so good. Back then, it was incredible. The detail, you could see every little facial animation. You could see every little... The ability to create intros was spectacular. In the intros, you could set your rows of lighting, you could set your music, you could set your camera angles. If you wanted to create a wrestler, you could create their intro. It was excellent. It was very easy to just pick up and play. It was very easy to pick up. Anybody could pick up, whether you were good, bad, or new. You could go and pick up the controller. If you were a button masher, just go in and hit some buttons. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So the animations at the time were also very fluid. You know how the very recent 2K games, you'll notice that the animations are getting better when they go in between sets, like when they pick somebody up and they body slam them and then they stand back up and then they blend into another animation. The blending is where it started. It started here.
Wow.
Before that, there were 32-bit games. I guarantee you the SmackDown series didn't have it as good as this game in terms of animation blending.
Yeah.
Everything blended well into one another. The only thing that I would probably give a slack about is maybe that their character models were a little bit too... they looked too shiny. Maybe almost too oily. Yeah. But, I mean, this game was fun. This game was good. It had good music. It had the licensed actual Raw intro theme song when you first booted up the game. And so Anchor doesn't do any more of their own games, but they're still around. They're still doing CG work and motion capture work for other games, specifically fighting games and wrestling games.
Interesting.
So I'm sticking with WWF Raw 2. I mean, granted, I didn't have anybody to play with, at least back then, but I used to enjoy the game by myself, and I absolutely love that game.
Well, you know, Raw 2, I mean, just looking at it right now, the ropes look pretty cool. The apron looks very textured, which, for me, it looks like people have actually wrestled on that mat. It looks like there's sweat, like there may have even been some blood stains on it. So the actual arena, a lot of detail in that, a lot of detail in the character models.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to your point, Chris, on the customization, I mean, you could change every single row on the ramp.
Wasn't it good?
Change the lighting. It was great.
So good.
If you wanted them to pulsate, if you wanted them to strobe, if you wanted them to have a certain sequence, the way that the ramp lights would light up, just a lot of thought was put into it.
Can we also not forget, you could pull any custom music you had on your Xbox hard drive and use it as theme music. That was huge.
For me, revolutionary. Incredible. Yeah, revolutionary thing, because I had tons of music saved to my Xbox hard drive.
Yes.
And a lot of it was consumed with wrestling theme songs.
Oh, yeah.
Ones that I was recording off of TV onto my computer, that I was editing myself just to capture some of these themes.
Right.
And I would upload them into the Xbox, and then I would put them into the entrance music for the wrestlers that I was creating in Raw 2.
Yeah, definitely.
So I spent a lot of time on the Create a Wrestler, spent a lot of time on just having fun creating, overall.
Right.
So Raw 2, hey, it's not in my top 5, but absolutely.
That's totally fine. I understand.
It deserves a spot on your list. It has a lot of good moments for you.
I think the only other wrestling game at the time on Xbox was, I believe, WrestleMania 18.
That was just the announcer yelling eliminated. That was hilarious, actually.
Eliminated. Great.
Eliminated!
Yeah, WWF Raw 2 Xbox was a very good time.
It's Batista. Look at that.
Oh, here he comes. The big man.
All right, so my number 5 entry into our top 5 list. What is it?
I don't know. I mean, you have, right now your collection of wrestling games is definitely bigger than mine. I can only take a guess, but I think you're going to have to go ahead and tell me, because I don't know.
Well, sounds good. I will tell you. My number 5 entry is SmackDown versus Raw 2008,
Ooh.
and it's featuring ECW. So
Ah.
something the 8-Bit Jobber community is going to learn about Dave is that I love ECW.
Right.
Always have. There was a moment in time where, hopefully some of you share this, I would stay up until the wee hours of the morning watching my terrible local station with the grainy footage of ECW, trying to wait for that show to come on. Sometimes it came on Friday nights, Saturday nights, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. There were moments where I think the sun was coming up as ECW was starting. Now, if we look back at some of the ECW games in the past years, way before this game came out, they were pretty bad games. If we do a worst 5 list, the ECW games or some of the Acclaim games, they may make that list.
Right.
And for me, this is a little bit of redemption. They featured ECW in this game. This was the resurfacing of Extreme Championship Wrestling when they tried to create a third brand to the WWE. So you had Raw, you had SmackDown, and you had ECW. They were recrowning an ECW champion, and you had a lot of people that were on the WWE roster that were participating, and then a lot of people added to the roster. So the reason why this game makes my list is because they brought back some folks from ECW and added them into the roster of WWE, but they ultimately made it their way into the game. This game was developed by Ukes. It was published by THQ and came out in 2007. One interesting fact was this was actually the first game created using a next-gen engine for the Xbox 360. It was the first next-gen wrestling game at the time because it still came out on the previous consoles as well.
So this was like the first like all hands on deck.
Yes.
Jump right into next-gen hardware for a wrestling series.
So as a wrestling fan or a gamer, you have your brand new Xbox 360 hardware.
Right.
And this was the first wrestling game crafted solely for that.
Yeah, this was it.
So there was a moment there for me, too.
Sure.
Graphics were definitely a step up from the previous games. The game had a lot of fighting styles. It had hardcore style, dirty, strong. It had one for the light heavyweights. And everybody had different move sets according to that. Now, that's probably something that got it some negative press and reviews as well. Depending on what class you were in, would actually change the actual move set that you could even choose from. And some of your guys like Eddie Guerrero, he was actually in a different class than the luchadors and the cruiserweights, so he couldn't do some of the springboard moves that a Rey Mysterio, let's say, could do. So they got a little bit of negativity from that. But one thing that they also added that I wish they would go back to as well is the struggle submissions. Now they had 3 or 4 different types of submissions that you could put people in.
I think I do remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, and the struggling submissions actually use the analog sticks, not quite in the monotonous way that they maybe use now, but they also had like ultimate grapples too, and
right.
they use the analog sticks in new ways, and it was one of the first games to really do that. But because of the influence of ECW, because of the ECW roster, Sandman, Sabu, Terry Funk, I could go on and on. I would suggest really go back and play it. Have some fun in the ECW arena with some of the ECW legends, and have some hardcore matches, and have some fun making some new ECW moments with some of those icons. It was a really good time for me.
How weird was it how strange was it, or was it strange at all, to see this brand and these specific characters, these specific wrestlers in a WWE mainly branded game? Was it strange for you? Was it a shock, or did it feel natural for you?
Well, from the game perspective, I mean, you can really blend the two things together. Was it weird to see them on the show?
Okay.
Was it weird to see them with the brand even before the game came out? And the answer to that is yes. It was weird to see that.
Yeah, I don't quite remember how. I don't remember how they blended those two together, like in terms of on screen time. Like,
yeah,
did they have? Okay, I remember they had ECW as a separate
show
A whole separate show.
and
right,
roster.
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right.
They had their own general manager. They had their own championship. It's what later became NXT.
Right.
They slowly got rid of a lot of the ECW talent for different reasons, and they would introduce new talent, and that became their farming system for developing new talent,
Right.
and that slowly became NXT. Even when it was still ECW, the last year or so, it pretty much was NXT. They brought back a lot of the even some old WWE superstars to go in. Big Show was champion at one point. Big Daddy V was at the top. Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Angle was even in ECW. Matt Hardy, I believe.
That's right.
So,
Kurt Angle was.
Yeah, with Paul Heyman, some of these characters were backed by him, and they were really trying to, again, develop this new talent for the future using top stars. And even if you look at NXT today, with somebody like Samoa Joe, Rhino, Austin Aries, you kind of have the same type of effect happening. You have these veterans rubbing elbows with either lesser known talent or rookies
Right.
that are coming up through their system. So that's what ECW really became. It became like this NXT, and so that was weird at first. I think it became a better show and had a great roster, but it wasn't ECW, and that's what was weird about it.
Okay.
It was a WWE product that was to develop new talent, and that's why they really decided to rebrand that a couple years later as NXT. And of course, we all know NXT today, a great show, great roster,
Yes,
an
very good.
always evolving roster.
Yes.
So,
Who is on the cover of that?
so yeah, the cover.
Wasn't Paul Heyman on the cover?
No, Heyman's on the cover actually, but it's got three guys, and it's interesting to think about this now. But it's got John Cena, and it's got The Undertaker, and it's got Bobby Lashley. So these were the champions of each of the brands.
Yeah.
And you think about where we are today. So that was 2008, came out in 2007.
Right.
So that was like 8, 9, 10 years ago almost at this point. And you have Undertaker still wrestling as a part-time competitor. You have John Cena migrating from a full-time to a part-time competitor. And Bobby Lashley, who's pretty much MMA and a little bit of TNA at this point.
Yep.
It's interesting to see that, we have moved on from those stars possibly, from being the top guys.
I thought Bobby Lashley was going to be around for a good while. I thought he made it around for longer than what he was. But good for him though, because he moved on to doing something else, and it may not be necessarily as mainstream as WWE. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not
His record's pretty
not a
good,
UFC fan, but he's doing well, and that's what matters. Is he's doing well, and I don't know what his current UFC career, how it compares to, say, Brock Lesnar's.
Well, he's not in UFC yet. He just does MMA. So he's done like Bellator, and he's done some other Strike Force and things.
Clearly, I'm not familiar with
but in
MMA
TNA he
stuff,
sucks.
but- Okay.
He's garbage.
Okay.
They don't book him right. They flip-flopped him from being a heel to a face to a heel.
Well, that's dumb.
They have toyed around with him having valets and things.
Yeah.
He doesn't work well on the mic, and he looks godly. The man's physique is just crazy.
Right. Yeah. He's always looked like that.
Yeah. So I don't think they book him right. If they want to make him the monster heel, make him the monster heel and put him with somebody that can talk for him so they can get him over as a heel.
Sure. Yeah.
If they want to make him into a monster face, really you're talking about making him Hulk Hogan at that point with a guy who's got a physique like this. And you got to make sure he's going up against believable heels that can actually beat him. Hogan had some of the best enemies at some of the top points of his career. When you think about Sergeant Slaughter, denouncing the USA,
right,
and aligning himself with Iraq. I mean, how much of a bigger villain can you get than Sergeant Slaughter during the Gulf War?
What a good time that was.
Going up against our G.I. Joe, our real American hero, Hulk Hogan.
Our
so
guy,
they can't book Lashley as a face without the right heel.
Right.
But that might be a topic for a different podcast. Let's go into our top 4.
Oh, number four. I think number four might be a common title. I'm sure a lot of gamers have played it. I know for a fact I played the hell out of it. No doubt. So this game was big for me because this to me was like revolutionary. It was a breath of fresh air. I love this game. Number 4.
What's the game?
I know, right? Everyone wants to know.
Yeah.
WWF SmackDown. Here comes the pain. Here comes the pain. You know it. So this game was big to me because the controls for me were revolutionary. Granted, some people are like, well, no big deal about the controls. You know, they're really fast, whatever. That's exactly it. The controls were fast. They were spot on. They weren't overly complicated. They were very simple, but they were simple enough to cause enough depth. The weapons that were used in that game, to me, were extremely unique. Like, you could take the fight backstage.
Oh yeah.
You could take the fight into like their little like some sort of like a backstage like docking area.
The SmackDown series became known for going anywhere and doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. And that was incredibly different to me. It was new, and I thought wrestling games at the time were getting a little slow. They were getting a little stagnant. Especially, I think by the time this came out, we had 1 or 2 WCW games that were. I don't even want to mention it. We'll talk about that. We will talk about that in another episode or some other time. But this game had very good intros at the time. This game actually used it didn't use redone music like what the N64 games did, where it was like an organ or
like a MIDI
like
file.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't MIDI file. This used actual intro videos, actual Titantron videos, actual songs. The intros weren't really that long. They didn't really go all the way out to the ring, but hey, it was the actual intro. I was ready with it. And it was very fast paced. Although the matches were very fast paced and the gameplay was fast paced, it didn't mean that the matches were over in like 5 or 10 minutes. The matches would go on for a good, decent amount of time.
Yeah.
The graphics were good. Characters they weren't the worst, but they weren't. I mean, it got the job done.
Absolutely.
The graphics were very good. The gameplay was just nonstop. It was frantic. It was fun. It was spot on. You could go anywhere, and I couldn't put it down. I would play the game over and over. I would play career mode, create a wrestler, and I would save all these characters. And this game was just it. This was it for me at the time. So, number 4 on my list, WWF SmackDown. Here comes the plane. Here comes the plane. Is that what I said?
Here comes the plane, boss.
Here comes the plane. Here comes the pain. Developed by Ukes.
Yeah.
Published by THQ, and it took off. This was a very huge title for WWF at the time.
Right. You know, I have it on my top 5, so I'm going to save a couple of my comments for later in my top 5.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. Sure.
All right.
I'm totally fine with that.
So we're going to go to my number 4.
Okay.
All right. So my number 4 was an entry on the GameCube, and this is one of my favorite tracks from that soundtrack. That became one of my favorite songs as well. I listen to this song all the time.
The GameCube at the time, not having very many wrestling games, except for this game and this franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. That's WWE Day of Reckoning 2.
Oh boy.
And this is Shakur with Bone Cracker.
Right.
Which I absolutely love.
Right.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
If you have Spotify or Apple Music or whatever you use to listen to your tunes, please search Shakur, Bone Cracker. Anyhow, Day of Reckoning 2 was published by Ukes. We've already talked about Ukes 3 times.
Sure.
Developed by Ukes, published by THQ in 2005.
Wait a minute. We talked about it 3 times?
I think so.
We talked about SmackDown. SmackDown was Ukes.
Yep.
Reckoning is 2. What was the other game?
Your last one.
Raw 2?
Oh, that wasn't Ukes.
Raw 2 was Anchor.
Here Comes the Pain was Ukes.
Yes. So this is the second time we're talking about Ukes.
SmackDown versus Raw 2008 was Ukes.
Was it?
Yep. So this is the 3rd entry from Ukes.
Okay. All right.
In our top 5.
I'm an idiot. It's fine.
It's fine.
This isn't the first time. It's going to happen again.
Yeah.
Get used to it.
Day of Reckoning 2. Couple really cool things about Day of Reckoning 2. It had a great stamina meter. I know we've talked before about the energy that you'd have to put into Day of Reckoning 2.
Yeah, I'll get to that.
And it's because of the stamina meter. The guys would actually get winded throughout the match, and you could actually do some limb damage as well. So the button mashing was off the chart. I know you've got some opinions on that. Mm-hmm. a great creator wrestler,
Very good.
great move list. Again, following in Yuke's footsteps here, because it is Yuke's. They learned from the other titles, and they had a lot of the same moves that the SmackDown series had. They had a lot of the same moves as their other entries, and they were able to use them. I think they reanimated a lot of them, because I don't think that Day of Reckoning used motion capturing. I think it was all
Yeah, I don't think
just
so
animation.
either. No, but it looked really good though.
It looked great. A little bit more cartoony than maybe the SmackDown series.
Sure, yeah,
But
I'd
it
go
was
with
still
that.
great. It kind of was a throwback to the N64 games for me.
Yes.
It was almost an evolution of those. It felt different than SmackDown. It was a little bit more of the grapple, and again, you mix the grapple system mixed with the stamina system. It felt more like the N64 wrestling games. And so for me, Day of Reckoning 2, I know we spent a lot of personal time on this one between us and our friends. We were hooked on this game.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
would constantly be creating people. I created friends, relatives. I created coworkers, and I had some hilarious moments showing off my created coworkers in Day of Reckoning 2. I mean, people would laugh so hard to see themselves in the game,
Yeah.
and they looked pretty damn good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had a lot of fun doing it.
Can we please talk about the fun times that we had, like getting 4-player going together? Because we would gather.
Yeah.
It would be like the 4 of us. We would head down to your basement at the time. You had a nice little setup going, and I didn't mind. I didn't mind who was there, and I didn't mind how late it was. If we were going to come over and we were going to play Day of Reckoning or Day of Reckoning 2,
Yeah.
we would. I think I brought an extra controller. I think one of our other friends at the time, Mike.
Yeah,
he brought
everybody
an extra
bring their
controller.
memory card.
We'd all bring a memory card. We'd all bring our controllers. We all jump in, and we all, man, I don't remember how many hours we put into that game, but we would do some crazy 4-player stuff in that game. That was extremely good for 4-player or even 2-player matches.
And
that was very
and the
good.
clipping in the game made it also exhausting and challenging. So if you were doing a ladder match and there were 2 guys on top of the ladder and somebody came up and just did a clothesline, whether or not the clothesline really connected, as long as the animations kind of crossed paths, that ladder would go flying, it would collapse, and the two character models on the ladder would also go flying, crash down to the mat. Everybody would be down, basically.
Right.
Because then the ladder would also hit the guy that did the clothesline on the way down. So you had everybody down on the mat. And then, again, button mashing to get up. So great title from Yuke's. Love Day of Reckoning series.
Yes.
So that's number 4 on my list.
Yes. So we're going to keep that discussion going. I think.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know if you know this or not, but Day of Reckoning 2 just so happens to be number 3 on my list
All right.
of the top 5 wrestling games of all time,
Sounds good.
in my opinion. So, Day of Reckoning 2 is absolutely etched in my brain because of the first fact that could come to mind. That would be, I don't know about you or anybody else who happens to be listening. Hi, audience. But that game was extremely physically exhausting to me. And it was very exhausting because I had to button mash my way through life at the time in that game. You have to button mash to get up. You have to button mash to I don't remember. I think we had a button mash to reverse. I don't remember. But also, okay, so let's say that you
I think it was the shoulder buttons.
Oh, but shoulder buttons.
And the
buttons.
GameCube was like
Yeah.
loudest clicky triggers ever.
The most responsive triggers, but also the most loudest.
Very
I think.
clicky.
And can we also talk about the clipping also, for lack of a better term? Okay, so 2 guys are going at it. They're wrestling. Somebody's about to do a body slam. Somebody could interrupt you with a punch.
Yes.
Or a normal, like a standing kick.
Stop the entire
Or
animation.
anything. Yeah, and those 2 guys just go flying back.
Yeah.
Okay, so you worked so hard and you button mashed your way to get up
Yep.
and grab the other guy and get revenge, only to have it interrupted yet again by somebody just interrupting the entire animation.
Constantly.
So it was very exhausting. There was no moment to stop.
Right.
There was no moment to rest. There was no moment to take a breather. You had to keep going all the way to the end. It was very physically exhausting. I also like to mention at the time that the GameCube. So I don't know if anybody knew this or not, and I stand by this until the end of time. The GameCube actually had a faster processor than the Xbox and PlayStation 2.
Really?
Yes. So I think the graphics on this game were the best out of the entire generation. Out of that entire generation of wrestling games, the GameCube had it with WWE Day of Reckoning 2.
Interesting.
And I will not budge from that point. I don't care.
We should put up a side-by-side showing the graphically
video.
best game from the Xbox,
Sure. A
best
comparison
graphics
video.
from the PS2, and then the Day of Reckoning 2.
Yeah.
Even just a screenshot or a video. Maybe we'll get on that. We can have you guys vote on Twitter. That'd be a lot of fun to see what the results are.
I would love to see what other people think of that too, because
Yeah.
I think that may be a controversial point. Maybe
I
a
don't necessarily
controversial opinion.
disagree. I would probably need to see the side-by-side in order to make a judgment call.
Okay, great. Yeah, we can absolutely see a side-by-side.
All right.
Another thing about this game, I think, was that it was very easy to pick up. The controls are very familiar.
Very user-friendly.
It had it used the old Yuke's control scheme of holding down A to do like a hard grapple, or just pressing to do a light grapple, and then mixing with the direction buttons to do different attacks. This game was fun. It was easy to pick up. It was one of the best looking on the GameCube, one of the best looking wrestling games at the time. And that's my number 3. WWE Day of Reckoning 2, developed by Yuke's, published again by THQ.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Chris. Before we go into my top 3, we're going to take a quick break to pay the bills.
We're going to take a quick bake and a break.
Yeah, bacon break.
Yeah.
And we're going to listen to some tunes, some of our favorite themes from the Attitude Era. We've got queued up the theme from Raw's War.
Okay.
So we're going to play that for everybody right now.
Great, let's do it.
It's my life in the box in front of me. Then you talk in my arms, it's the soul of me. You walk by, ask to see me late face Put hands on the floor, in your eye.
All right, the 8-bit jobbers are back from our break.
We are back. That was a
Which
good break.
Really consisted of taking a couple pisses,
And-
getting some more rum.
That's right. Back at it. Here we go.
Here we are. So we are the 8-bit jobbers. We're discussing our top 5 wrestling video games of all time. I'm Dave.
And I am Chris.
Today we're talking about the top 5 wrestling video games. So follow us on Twitter.
At 8-Bit Jobbers.
Let's build the 8-bit jobber community together, one jobber at a time.
One jobber at a time. Here we go.
One small step for man, one giant leap for jobbers.
For jobbers all across the world.
8-bit jobbers, if you will.
Okay.
All right, so we last left you off, and I was about to speak on my top 3. And my number 3 favorite wrestling video game of all time,
Uh-huh.
it's WWF No Mercy.
Ooh. Can't forget about it.
It's a favorite amongst the wrestling video game fan.
Right.
It's a favorite amongst the internet wrestling community. And a lot of people, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of flack for it not being my number 1.
Right.
But let's listen to a couple tracks from No Mercy. Some classic tunes from the menus in No Mercy.
How can you not remember
some
this?
classic music
If you
here.
played any wrestling game. Hello.
Yeah. So No Mercy came out in 2000. It was the follow-up from WrestleMania 2000 on the N64.
That's right.
And it was actually developed by Aki, a.k.a. Aki, published by THQ, and known for the amazing grapple system that they created in their previous entries, mainly from the WCW series into the WWF series. Great creator-wrestler depth, awesome move list, very, very detailed animations.
Yeah.
You'll remember the SmackDown Mall. And
SmackDown Mall.
SmackDown Mall. And you earn money through the game and through the career mode, and you would use that money to go back to the SmackDown Mall and buy more items.
Yes.
Buy more moves, buy more wrestlers. And, overall, it really is the model for what the future wrestling games, after No Mercy, it's what they all envied to be. they all had career modes. They had, Road to WrestleMania style modes.
Right.
Create a Wrestler mode. This game was the complete package for me. And we talked about countless hours as friends playing Day of Reckoning 2 with other friends. And for me back in the day, playing No Mercy with friends and family members, we were stuck on this title years. I mean, absolute years.
Yeah, I think we were stuck in this title. I mean, we kept playing this even after the 64-bit era and the console generation passed. I mean, We're still playing it. This is, I would have to chime in and say this is one of those timeless titles that I just can't see how anybody would get tired of playing this game or WrestleMania 2000 for that matter. I mean, this is it.
Yeah, we could pop it in right now, and it feels like you continued where you left off. You still might remember some of the movesets of your favorite wrestler. You might remember just how fluid the gameplay was and the ease of navigating that controller today. Even if you haven't played it for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever. Right. The ability to grab that controller today, pick it back up, pick your favorite wrestler or your creator wrestler that you created 15 some odd years ago, to play it as smooth as it is. It's just a phenomenal game. I don't have any complaints. Even today, you might complain that, hey, the graphics aren't great. Well, again, you're playing a game that's 15, 16 years old. Take that stuff out of the equation. There's nothing wrong with this game. It is the complete package wrestling game.
There is nothing wrong with this game.
I have no gripes. It's in my top 3. We're probably going to get some arguments of why it wasn't higher.
Uh-huh.
A lot of these games that are in my top 5, it's because of the hours and the passion that I and people around me, including yourself, put into these games. So the only reason it's not higher on my list, it's because if you want to quantify the hours and the passion, there's 2 other games that are just higher when you quantify that time. That's it.
It's, yeah, I mean, I've certainly sunk a lot of hours into this game. I wish I could give you a number. I don't know. I've sunk more hours into this game than WrestleMania 2000, but WrestleMania 2000 was that's WrestleMania 2000 was absolutely up there too. But this game was obviously the sequel. I absolutely remember when I was younger, I would bounce back between both games. But WWF No Mercy is, I mean, the title in itself, No Mercy, brings you back to sitting down with like your best friend at the time and going at it for hours. And I mean, I obviously, okay. So again, I didn't have very many people to play games with when I was younger, but when I did, when my older brother David would be around, or when I had a few friends around from grade school at the time who would come over and we would play something together, this would be one of the absolute go-to must-play titles was WWF No Mercy. So this is history, and it's like it's a no-brainer. You want to talk about wrestling games? First or last, we have to talk about WWF No Mercy.
Yeah, and the other thing that comes to mind is you may be somebody listening to this that's maybe 15 years old, right? And this game came out in 2000. This is 2016, so this game is 15, 16 years old.
Yes.
And you could be a wrestling fan, you could be a video game fan, and have never, ever played this game. And part of the reason why we're doing this video game-inspired wrestling webcast, 8-Bit Jobbers, is because I want to try to bring some of that to you, our jobber community. If you are new to the wrestling world, you're new to the video game world, and you haven't played some of these games, I challenge you to go and play them. In the future, where we take this community and where we take this webcast, we will definitely take it to video, and we will show you some of the highlights, some of our favorite moments, and we will also be able to share some links with you, maybe to help you find some of these games, or recommend what to do in the games and things of that nature. But No Mercy is one you should have in your collection. I've got 2 copies of it.
Yeah, I think we're talking about this. I have two copies too, and I don't know how exactly I ended up with them.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I forgot that I had one, and at one point I did have all my older games locked up in my storage unit, and I must have saw it somewhere and thought, oh, hey, I don't have it. But yeah, I have two copies too. But hey, good. Then we know we don't lose it.
Absolutely. We got 4 between the two of us.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Let's do it.
I have 2 because I once lent some of my favorite wrestling games for the N64 to a friend of mine.
Okay.
And he kind of fell off the face of the earth. I hope he's okay. That's many, many years ago. I lost touch with him.
Okay.
Never got those back. And I think I had thought No Mercy was one of them.
Yeah.
So eventually, like you're saying, I came across one, picked it up because I had thought I lost it. So I still have my original, and I have another. I have a backup. So,
okay, good.
Well, on to you, Chris. I think we're on number 2 now.
All right. Number 2. Controversial topic. We're going to get right into it. Uh-oh, here we go. At least controversial between you and I, because I think the last time we had discussed this, you don't even consider this to be... you don't even consider this to be a real wrestling game. So let's just get right into it. Number 2, WrestleMania, the arcade game. That's right. We're getting right into it. This was developed by Midway Games Chicago and published by Acclaim. We all remember Acclaim, right? Turok, sports games.
Turok's great.
Sports games ports at the time. WrestleMania, the arcade game. I loved it. WrestleMania arcade was over the top, right? It was very cartoony. It was even not... it was... I don't know how to describe it. How I saw wrestling as a kid, in my mind, in my goofy, retarded mind...
Oh, my God.
Is what WrestleMania was. If you want to know what I saw when I watched wrestling on TV, play WrestleMania, the arcade game.
Were you on
That's
drugs?
What I saw. No, I wasn't on drugs. I saw everything as being over the top.
Yeah.
Let's talk about WrestleMania, the arcade
Unfortunately,
game.
it was
over
the top.
Yeah.
At the time.
It was very over the top, but because it was over the top, it was very fun. The game played as a fighting game. Okay, yes, I get that. It played as a fighting game. But that's what made it even more fun, because I was very much into fighting games at the time. What happened during WrestleMania, the arcade game, that's exactly how I saw
There's
it.
Doink, baby.
There's Doink. Doink the Clown. Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler doing commentary during all the matches made it even better. So the version I had when I was a kid, I had the SNES version.
Yeah.
The only... so during this time period, the only console I owned was an SNES. Mm-hmm. So I still consider the SNES version to be like the absolute version. Yeah. Now, obviously, there were other ports that were better. Like right now, I just picked up the Sega Saturn version.
Why?
That's why? Because it's so much better. It's so much better than the other versions. It really is. It sounds better. It looks better. There are more frames of animation animation between each character.
I need some ammunition so I can blow that game up.
If that's how you feel, that's fine. Also, the game sounded good. It had very good commentary. Jerry the King Lawler and Vince McMahon, they were very quick to commentate on everything that happened in the game. It was extremely good. I also think that the intro songs, as you could hear in the background, the intro songs were created specifically for the game. But I didn't notice anything different. It sounded
very good.
It was very spot on, I think, at the time. So they took some shortcuts, like the intros were very fighting game like. The matches were very, very, very quick. They would last no more than like maybe 2 minutes. The controls were very, again, fighting based. Like they had a lot of half circle motions, a lot of back, a lot of forward. And the art was very, let's call it comical at the very least. Mm-hmm. For example, Undertaker could pull out a tombstone, like an actual tombstone, and hit you over the head. Yeah. He, I believe the input was down towards A, and he would send like projectile like ghosts towards you, which would send you flying back. Shawn Michaels would pull out a baseball bat and whack you upside the head with it. This was Bam Bam Bigelow. I believe it was forward X. He had a flame punch where his fist would catch fire and he'd punch you with it. And the SNES version, unfortunately, I didn't experience everything that the game had to offer because the SNES version had Bam Bam Bigelow and Yokozuna missing from it. Why, I don't know.
Did?
Yeah. SNES version, they were completely cut.
So in your opinion, it's the Saturn version is the best version of the
Yeah,
game.
the Saturn version is it is like the best version. Also because the Saturn hardware at the time was very good at porting arcade games too. So it was closer to the arcade version that you would experience in the actual arcade.
Have you played it for PC?
I've never played any PC game that I can remember. So no.
Do you don't own it for the PC?
I don't own it for the PC. No.
Do you want it?
Yeah.
I think I have a PC version of the game. If you want it, I don't want it.
Well, why would you not want it? It's WrestleMania arcade game.
I feel so bad for you.
If you don't, if you don't want it, I'll
it's
take
yours.
it.
It's yours.
Really?
Please.
That's it. I'm
I'll
done.
pay you to take it.
You don't have to pay me. I'll
go
gladly
find
take
it right now.
Thank you very
Where
much.
is it?
I would love to have it because I love that damn game so
my
much.
God.
It was the very first. Also, a side note. This is probably pretty important. I should have remembered this, or I should have mentioned this earlier. This was the very first wrestling game, quote unquote wrestling game, that I've ever played. In my entire life was WrestleMania, the arcade game. That's probably why I also hold a special place in my heart.
It's
but
very
from
meaningful
here,
to you.
From here, I branched out in all directions. I branched out from here to future wrestling games. I branched out from here to like pro wrestling on NES and WrestleMania on NES, and the older SNES titles such as Super WrestleMania, WWF Raw. This game did it for me. So, this game is it for me. Also, how can I not mention this? This game had digitized, scanned actors. They took the actual wrestlers.
That was
They digitized them and scanned, and this was like Midway Chicago's niche at the time.
Yeah.
They would scan, digitize actors. Well, they had the actual wrestlers
Yep.
do motion capture, and their actual models are in the game. I mean, this game looked good at the time.
I will absolutely give it credit for two things. The character models, which you can't even call them character models, because much like, to your point, much like Midway was able to get character models for Mortal Kombat scanned into their game, or actors.
Yeah.
You have very much the same thing here with WrestleMania the arcade game. So you have a similar look, which gave it a huge sense of realism.
Yes.
The comical stuff, but that was like added, almost like they had superpowers.
Right.
The actual wrestlers looked great, and as you've been hearing, we've been playing the some of the menu music, and these are the actual entrance themes they came out to, like Chris said, and these are the real entrances. These aren't midis. These aren't things that are composed to sound like their themes. These are real themes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there was definitely a look and a feel that was similar to what you were seeing on TV at the time, and you had a very brief roster, but these were really the top 8 superstars in the WWF at the time. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Doink the Clown.
Mm-hmm.
These were the guys that were featured. You could argue, we talked about jobbers. I mean, at certain points in Doink's career, you could argue Doink was very much a jobber.
You could, but
In fact, he could be our mascot, maybe.
he could be. But I mean, he may have been a jobber at the time, but I mean, people liked him. He was relevant. He was famous.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, he was enough to earn his way into a video game in his own slot. So, in WrestleMania, for those who never played it, the roster that we had, it was short but sweet. We had Doink the Clown, Yokozuna, as you could hear, The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Bret the Hitman Hart, Razor Ramon, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Lex Luger. Lex Luger seems to be like the one guy that people forget about the most being in this game. So it had 8 characters. All 8 characters controlled differently. They all had their own different special attacks. But this game was just all around fun, all across. I mean,
I can't take it anymore.
This game is good.
Enough.
Dave obviously hates the game.
I hate this
You
game.
hate this game
So much.
That's fine. I understand.
That's why
I
it's
love
your
this
top
game.
5. It's not my
This
top
game
5.
is incredibly good. It's so good that it's earned my spot as
Number
number
two?
2.
Oh.
As number 2.
God.
And I'm going with that. Let's do it. Number 2. WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game, published by Acclaim, developed by Midway Chicago, multi-platform. More platforms I could name, but it was everywhere.
Yeah, it's been on plenty of platforms. I
Yes.
guess it had to be good, right?
Yes.
to a degree. All right, so moving on to my number 2. We've already discussed it a little bit, and we've been talking about SmackDown. Here Comes the Pain, and hey, let's go back and relive it for a minute.
Sure,
Brock
let's do it.
Lesnar, the Beast incarnate,
Hello, he was on the cover.
on the cover of the game.
Here comes
Because
the pain.
when Brock's music hit, you knew that the pain was coming.
I still know it right now.
And this was the first SmackDown game to not feature The Rock on the cover.
Yeah, that was actually refreshing to me. I
Right?
think. Yeah, I was tired of seeing him, and
No,
to see Brock Lesnar on the
I
cover.
just misspoke.
Uh-oh.
It's not the first game to not feature Rock. It is the first game to not be titled after The Rock. So Here Comes the
Oh,
Pain.
you're right, yeah.
It was titled after Brock Lesnar.
Yes.
The
Very
first
much
time. So this was a defining moment for me in the product that was on television at the time. And the game was also a defining product. Number 2 on my list, developed by Ukes, published by THQ in 2003. This came 3 years after No Mercy. SmackDown has been known for its fast grapple gameplay. We talked about it earlier when Chris brought up Here Comes the Pain. Since the birth of the SmackDown series, it was born on fast gameplay, quick grapples, running at speed so quick so you can get to the top and do an attack. But Here Comes the Pain really solidified a lot of things for me. The interaction around the arena and the environments that Chris made mention of earlier. The depth of the roster. The creative wrestler. Again, time and passion spent on these products, Chris. On these titles, I should say.
Right.
I spent a ton of time creating wrestlers.
Sure.
I had to have 2 or 3 memory cards just for this game.
Holy crap! I never knew that.
Because you can only fit, let's just round and say you can fit 20 creative wrestlers. Well, there's a moment in time where I had 50, 60 creative wrestlers. My buddy would come over, we'd swap creative wrestlers.
Right.
We'd have to manage our memory cards and
Yeah.
trade creative wrestlers, and you'd go online. Back in the day, I'd sign into AOL,
Uh-huh.
and I'd go online, and I'd get CAWs,
AOL.
creative wrestlers. I'd get, the list, what part to use, what size the guy's leg was supposed to be,
Yeah.
what color, and you look at the red has to be here, and yellow has to be,
Yeah.
and I'd try to duplicate what other people were making. I'd upload my own CAWs online.
Right.
Again, share them amongst my friends and family. And this game, again, like No Mercy, I sunk a lot of time and energy and passion into it. It was very rewarding. You could do a lot of things in this game with weapons that you couldn't do in other games.
Right.
You could stack tables and put a guy through 2 tables.
Which was pretty big at the time.
I don't think you can do that in any other
That
game.
was so satisfying. I don't remember. I don't know.
think you
Yeah.
can do it in any other SmackDown game. I don't think you can do it in another game. Let me know if you can, because we'll go back and relive that. I'll take a few moments of time to do that. Here's an interesting fact. I want you to think about this.
Okay.
This game had no voiceovers. Let that sink in for a second. That means there was no ring announcer and there was no commentary.
That's true. It didn't have any of that at all. It was
wrestling.
yeah, it was just wrestling. Yeah.
The only thing they recorded the Earl Hebner's voice for the referee. No matter who the referee was, it was Earl Hebner's voice. Counting the 1, 2, 3 for you. But really think about that. They focused on the presentation and the in-ring action before they focused on making it look like what happens on TV every Monday night or at every pay-per-view. So there's a lot of reasons why Here Comes the Pain is number 2 on my list. But because of the in-ring action, the roster, the great creative wrestler, again, back to my comments about No Mercy, it created the foundation for what a wrestling game would be for years to come. Here Comes the Pain started to redefine that and gave you even more depth in the creative wrestler with the weapons. Non-stop anarchy at sometimes. And I'll give you guys a challenge. Here's a retro challenge for you. Go back and pop in No Mercy. Turn the health meters off. Turn the finisher meter off.
Whoa, that's pretty deep.
Your HUD will be clean. It'll look like you're watching on TV. They don't have health meters when you watch Raw. Your presentation should be clean. Nothing on the screen. Maybe the clock telling you how many minutes have gone by. But me and my buddy used to do this. We used to play the game as if it was real. Yeah, I know wrestling's not real. You don't got to tell me.
Yeah, everybody calm down. We know
Yeah,
it's not
calm
real.
down, calm down. Don't tweet me anything about wrestling being fake. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, we know already. Everybody laugh.
Yeah. It's a work. I get it. But we would play the game, and we would play it as if it was really happening. So in other words, you're playing the game, we're fighting, we're wrestling, and maybe you got to a really good spot. I did a great suicide dive, put the guy through 2 tables, what have you. And I try to hit my finish. Kick him in the gut, hit my finisher, guess what? I didn't have a finisher. Got to try again.
You didn't have a finisher.
I didn't have a finisher.
Oh,
you got to try again. So
that's
it's all about.
awful.
It was all about timing. It was all about momentum, and you didn't really know if you had a finisher stored or not. And that game, I think you could store 5 finishers, and it did it automatically for you.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, so-
there's a little meter,
Yeah,
and you could store finishers.
Yeah.
And whenever you want, you could. I totally forgot about that.
that was a
That's
great
cool.
feature. So
yeah.
so let's say time went on. I was really whooping this guy's ass, right? Maybe I had 3 finishers stored. I really didn't know. So there were some really embarrassing moments when you could really lay the smack down on somebody and hit them with 3, 4, 5 finishers in a row. The game was over, right? But there's other times where you went for the finish and you didn't have it. And the other guy could have a minute to rebound. I mean, we went back and forth. One match. Here's another option. Turn the time limit off. You could be stuck on the same match because we were trying to put on a show for each other. And we were trying to finish it at the right spot.
Yeah. So you were trying to essentially,
Work a real wrestling match.
yeah, and at the same time keep it entertaining for you guys.
Yeah.
But also make it as like not exactly a simulation,
Right.
but almost close to the real thing.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little
exactly,
bit.
Yeah.
So, I definitely recommend going back. Play WWF Here Comes the Pain on the PS2. Pop that in. Give Yuke some respect. Hashtag Ukes is awesome. And let us know if you were able to recreate some great moments in Here Comes the Pain. So that's my number 2.
The entire SmackDown series is it's unforgettable to say the least. I mean, and so I can't. I think we should also mention that this series, the SmackDown series at this time, was exclusive to the PS2, right?
That's right. That's
so
right.
this content you could get nowhere else. I mean, you had to have a PS2 or know somebody had a PS2 in order to play these games. This was, I mean, I have to go back to what I talked about before. SmackDown, Here Comes the Plane. Here comes the plane. Why do I keep saying plane?
Holy crap.
I don't know what that's about. Here comes the plane. Here comes the pain. You
The
could-
plane, boss, the plane.
I know.
You'd have to be like 50 years old to get that reference.
Yeah, does anybody understand that reference? If you don't get it, tweet us. We'll tell you about what it's about. At 8-Bit Jobbers, we'll tell you exactly what it's about. So, do you remember when you could go backstage and there was like garbage cans,
Drive a forklift.
dumpsters, forklifts, the forklifts you could drive toward each other? Come on. If you don't remember that, again, get this game. It's on eBay for at least like, a few dollars here and there. It's well worth your time. Please pick up the entire SmackDown series on PS2 if you could. How many games were there on PS2 for the SmackDown? There were 3, right?
Oh, no.
Or were there more?
Well, there's, the SmackDown series evolved into the WWE series.
Right.
Then evolved into the 2K series.
Right.
Offhand, I got to tell you, I know that 2008, which was in my top 5, that was the 9th entry in the series.
Okay.
So at this point,
So I think on PS2 there was SmackDown.
just bring it.
And then there was SmackDown, Just Bring It.
Shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth.
Here comes the pain.
Here comes the pain. Was there
Then we went to the ones that were dated.
Was there a SmackDown Know Your Role?
That was SmackDown number 2 on the PS1.
Oh, PS1.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. Okay, you're right.
Can't forget about those.
No.
I mean, again, it's the fast-paced gameplay.
Right.
It was born in SmackDown 1 and 2.
Yes.
They had a unique entrance system. They had a little bit of a unique presentation at the time.
Yeah.
They were doing something different.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a future episode of this game, we delve into some of the series. Just talk about the SmackDown series because there's plenty to talk about.
Yeah, and I personally feel like the SmackDown series on both PS1 and 2 is very overlooked.
Yeah.
Like I don't, maybe it's just me, I don't hear enough about it being mentioned.
Right.
I don't hear enough about Know Your Role or Shut Your Mouth or Here Comes the Pain.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah. So no, I won't. So I don't hear enough about these games. I think there needs to be a bigger and better spotlight in these games because people forget about these.
Well, the thing about them is, if we look back to some of the N64 classic wrestling games, they were each titled very independently. They weren't sharing a common name. And then you had the SmackDown series, which was sharing a common name for a long time. Probably didn't get the respect that it deserved until maybe Here Comes the Pain.
Right.
But then they very quickly changed to SmackDown versus Raw. Because the product, the on-television product was changing. And then the SmackDown versus Raw went for years and years and then turned into the WWE and then now the 2K series. So it went through many, many evolutions, and it's still currently going. I mean, you have to say that the current WWE 2K16, that is the SmackDown series, it's still Ukes.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, I mean, they've had almost 2 decades of this series. So really, it is the longest lasting developer and publisher relationship until they went with 2K after THQ closed. But
sure,
it really is, if you want to put it in wrestling terms, SmackDown, Ukes, is the current reigning and defending champion of wrestling video games.
Yes.
Nobody can contest that right now. They are the last man standing.
I would agree with that. And, I to get something out of the way, WWE 2K16, I don't necessarily find to be the greatest wrestling title, of all time. Absolutely not. I mean, I have to say again, we were talking about this earlier today. I don't find the game to be fun. It's not as fun as it should be, and it's not as fun as past games used to be. However, I do give credit, and you put the seed in my head, and I really should have mentioned this earlier. I do give credit to Ukes because they're trying something different. They're trying to branch out. They're trying to make it. And I mean, I'm not speculating here. This is a fact. They're trying to make it more of a sports simulation type of game,
a wrestling sim
where your skill has to actually be on point.
Yes.
Because if it's not, then you're not going to do very well. Yep. And that's what they want to do. I respect it because they're trying to as much as I don't find it to be fun, they're trying to do something different.
Yeah.
So kudos and props to them.
There is a commonality in our top 5 at least. And hey, 8-bit jobber community, fan base, internet wrestling community, let us know. Our top 5 is about fun, about the depth of gameplay, the hours that we put into it, the passion. And our point is that WWE 2K16, it just isn't fun. And Ukes has published, or Ukes has developed incredible games that I have sunk out hundreds of hours of gameplay into.
Hundreds of hours, yeah, countless.
Much like I challenge you, I challenge 2K. 2K, bring back the fun in wrestling games. Go back to your library. Go back to your catalog. Listen to the internet wrestling community. Listen to the 8-bit jobber community. We are telling you, we want wrestling games that are fun. I would argue if somebody, and hopefully that's Ukes and 2K, if somebody would sink millions of dollars into making a retro wrestling game, could you imagine a modernized version of No Mercy?
Almost.
I think about it. A polished version with an updated roster, an online system,
right,
where you can do multiplayer online,
sure,
share creative wrestlers just like you can in the 2K series. But imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine No Mercy 2.0. Imagine No Mercy 2016.
Take something like that, put it up on Xbox Live Arcade or PSN.
How much would you pay for it?
$10?
$10?
I would pay $14.99. I'd pay $15 for it.
Would you pay $20? No Mercy 2.0, No Mercy 2016. Would you pay $20?
If I knew that it would control just like it.
No, it's Ukes. They're ripping off Aki. They're going to go back to the wheelhouse. They're going to look at what Aki did. They're going to redo it. Let's not forget, Ukes developed Day of Reckoning, and Day of Reckoning felt like Aki's system.
Yes.
So they've done it before.
I would absolutely pay $19.99, $20 for that game.
Hey, I'd probably pay double that. If you told me they would guarantee us hundreds of hours of gameplay
Yeah.
that would last a year or two. What if they updated the roster every year?
Oh,
What if they guaranteed you another dozen wrestlers every year?
oh. If they took the current roster or the current, the current lineup of famous wrestlers and they put them into this type of system.
Yep. They give you some Hall of Famers, give you some legends, but then they update it every WrestleMania season. As soon as WrestleMania season kicks off, they update it.
Let's acknowledge how much value you're getting for this. You're getting your friends back together.
Yep.
Like the four of us when we were playing Day of Reckoning 2 in your basement on GameCube.
Like it was in 2005.
Let's get all those guys back together. We're gonna boost up your Xbox One or your PS4, or maybe even Steam. We're gonna hop on at the same time. Here we go online.
We're either
Easily
doing
$20.
couch co-op or we're doing online. And,
If it could do both,
oh my God.
holy crap, that'd be even more. Like some people may even pay up to $25 for that.
So 2K, Ukes, I hope you're listening. We'll try to get the word out. We'll get the internet wrestling community behind us. We'll get the 8-bit jobber movement behind us. But hey, it's just an idea. It came out in a podcast.
Sure.
I didn't even know we were going to talk about that. Just an idea that's in my head.
Right.
And I think somebody can make some money with it. I don't have a whole lot of time to do that. So I would rather benefit.
Right. Yeah.
I would rather benefit from playing it with you, with some other friends. I don't have time to develop something like that.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
that
Understandable.
would be awesome. So, all right. So we kind of got off topic there, but we're back into our top 5.
All right. We're back.
Back into our top 5. And Chris, why don't you take it away? This is your number 1 wrestling video game of all time. What is it?
Oh, don't you want to know?
I do want to know.
Okay. Straight to the top. Number 1. I just threw my pen against my microphone.
You're excited.
I know, right? Calm down. I was starting to wreck the place. Okay. Number 1. We're going back to it. WWF No Mercy. Please, can we go back to No Mercy? Because No Mercy is my epitome of it is the wrestling game
Of all time.
of all time. When I think about a wrestling game, I think about WWF No Mercy. The only way that WWF No Mercy to me is perfect. The only way that this game could be better is if perhaps maybe it took advantage of the N64 expansion pack. But however,
that's an interesting thought.
but you have to think, I mean, for the most part, let's be honest here. WWF No Mercy was kind of sluggish. It's a little sluggish in frame rate. That's fine. What are you going to do? But hey, listen.
Listen to this.
The game was good. And hello, the music.
Diggity dog.
Options. I mean, come on. Okay, so
Oh,
look,
we love it.
listen. This game was very easy to pick up, obviously. I think it had a good balance. WWF No Mercy had a good balance between a very technical, very straightforward, very skill-based wrestling game and a pick up the controller and button mash and still have fun type of wrestling game.
Yep.
The detail in the characters for what the N64 hardware could offer at the time, I feel was very good. So, okay, I get it. All they did was lay a digitized picture of the actor's face on a 2D model. I get it, but the way they did it was very good. Also, because they were limited with the graphics that they had and the detail they could do at the time, they made up for it with detail. The mannerisms, the taunts, the motions that they had in the game were spot on to what the actual wrestlers did.
It was believable.
It was very believable, yes. And this game was a very frantic 4-player game. You could have just as much fun with 4 people or by yourself. There was absolutely nothing. I can't think of anything wrong that this game did, that the developers did, besides the frame rate lagging at times, depending on how many characters were on the screen. But you can't really blame them. That was N64 hardware. They were doing what they could, and I think that what they were doing, what they could at the time, was spot on. I can't remember. Did WWF No Mercy have an in-ring referee, or no? It didn't. No, it didn't, because you can have special guest referees, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So,
They had an on-screen referee that would jump out of the... He was animated.
right. Yeah. Oh wait,
I think.
was that WCW Revenge?
Jesus. Can't remember.
I think that was WCW NWO Revenge.
I think all of the Aki games
Maybe
had
all
that
of them did.
illustrated referee that would jump out of the screen.
Yeah. Aki was big on that. At any rate, this was also developed by Aki, published by THQ, and I can't stress this enough. If you think about wrestling games, if you and I play a wrestling game, we can't not play WCW or WWF No Mercy.
Absolutely.
This game is history. Can I also mention the fact, I mean, this is a very simple detail. The cartridge was black.
Yeah.
You could easily find it. It
Yep.
stuck out amongst your other games.
Yep.
Hey, so you come over to my house, think like we're like,
Yep.
think you and I are like
12.
12, 13, 14. You come over to my house. Hey, what do you want to play? You want to play WWF No Mercy?
Yeah, get that one. It's right there.
Okay, there
Yep.
it is. Snatch it really quick
Yep.
because it's black. Sticks out all the cartridges.
Just like back in the day with the gold Zelda cartridge.
Oh, the gold Zelda cartridge.
Same kind of idea.
You cannot forget about the gold Zelda cartridge.
Yeah.
So, if you were to ask me, what bad things did No Mercy have? I can't think of anything other than the frame rate.
I agree. I said the same thing.
I mean, sure. I mean, I suppose maybe the audio was a little limited.
Yeah.
They probably didn't do much with it. But then again,
If this game was on the PlayStation,
sure.
you would have had the power of it being a CD. They
Yes.
would have been able to upload, a different kind of audio file, so you wouldn't have had MIDI tracks.
Right.
You would have had
Yeah,
better
that's
audio
very
tracks.
true. Yeah.
You would have had, arguably, though, on the N64, you had faster loading times because it's cartridge-based.
Oh, yeah. You had
So-
next to no loading times. Yeah.
There could have been a lot of pluses because it was on a cartridge versus on a CD.
Yeah.
And that's, hey, a big difference. If you go back and play No Mercy, and you went back and played one of the SmackDown games that came out the same year, you're going to have an incredibly different experience just based around load times. So you got to give them a lot of credit for what they were able to accomplish on the cartridge.
They mastered it.
Yeah.
This wasn't their first run on an N64 cartridge. They went with WCW NWO World Tour. Same thing with Revenge. They did WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy, and they also did the Japanese import games, the Virtual Pro Wrestling series. So they knew what they were doing. This wasn't anything new to them, and they maximized it. And I cannot give them enough credit. WWF, No Mercy, Nintendo 64, my number one wrestling game of all damn time.
Wow, all damn time.
All damn time. Every
All
day.
right, so that brings me to my number one, Chris.
All right, let's do it.
We've talked about Ukes. We've talked about Aki. We've talked about Here Comes the Pain. We've talked about No Mercy. We've even talked about WrestleMania, the arcade game. God damn it. What could possibly be my number one? And you actually just tipped off the audience, so good job showing your cards there.
Oh, well, thank you.
Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 is my number one
Holy crap.
wrestling video game of all time. I'm going to play a little bit of the intro here for you.
Great, let's take it.
The intro is great, actually. If you watch this intro, you can find it on YouTube. We'll probably share it on Twitter, so you can watch the trailer for this game. This is developed by Aki. It came out in 2000, but it came out in the spring of 2000, and No Mercy came out in the fall of 2000 for the holiday season. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 is technically the predecessor to No Mercy, but really look at it as like brother and sister. They're two separate siblings. It is not the version that No Mercy was built on. Even if it came out after No Mercy, it would not be the sequel to No Mercy. These are two distinct, very separate games.
Right.
So there were two wrestling video game series on the N64 in Japan. The WWF games did release in Japan.
Uh-huh.
They were critically acclaimed just like they were here in the States. But the two Japanese wrestling games, one was based on the New Japan Wrestling series, and they were very good. Very cartoony, very fast-paced, maybe more of a blend between the SmackDown series and the Aki series in America. But the leader was Virtual Pro Wrestling. First game came out in 1997. Had a great roster from All Japan. Had Vader, Stan Hansen, KJ Muda, the Great Muda. Amazing roster. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 only capitalizes on that further. The great thing they did, very crafty over there at Aki, they only had the All Japan Wrestling license. So what they did was they put other wrestlers in the game and they changed their names and slightly changed their clothing. But because of the wrestler editor, just like the WWF No Mercy and WrestleMania had, because of the wrestling editor, they were able to, the user, the purchaser, the consumer could go in and they could actually change that wrestler to make him look like he's supposed to look, and then change his name.
Yeah.
Now,
so if you didn't agree with how they made the wrestler looked, or if you thought it should look a little bit more different,
accurate, yeah,
you could contour it and change it to your liking.
Yeah, and then rename them what their real name was supposed to be. There were guys in that game. Mike Awesome was in that game. Masato Tanaka was in that game. Hayabusa from FMW. Again, these were guys that crossed over and came to the States through ECW. And again, my passion, something that I loved, was ECW back in the day, and I still do. I can watch old school ECW matches and relive some of those feelings and emotions that I had. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 was the closest thing I could get to ECW action in the form of a video game at that time.
Yeah.
The game had more blood than the American versions. They had mixed martial arts moves and wrestlers/fighters. They had a great combination of MMA and wrestling, and the hybrid of those two things really made for very unique matches. There were some guys that only did boxing and kickboxing styled moves. There was also a great reversal system. The reversal system was based on your wrestler type, and some guys would be able to flip out of a German suplex and come back with a forearm. Playing as the Great Muta. When you were up in a powerbomb, the Great Muta could spew his green mist in the eyes of his opponent, reversing the powerbomb. So there are a lot of great things they thought about. They also had a logic system, and you can hear the passion in my voice.
Yeah.
You need to play Virtual Pro Wrestling 2.
I love it. Keep going.
There was a logic system. So if the computer was controlling the wrestler or the creator wrestler, the logic system would come in and they would compete in the way that was appropriate. So if that guy was a lightweight, if that guy was a luchador, or if they were more of a mixed martial art fighter, they would do reversals and do moves associated to their class. It was much more of an extreme title. There were moves in that game that are considered quote-unquote banned in the United States. The Burning Hammer, which is the reverse Death Valley driver, where the guy gets dropped straight on his head and his neck.
Okay.
That move is in the game. They even have a reverse Burning Hammer from the top rope. They've got a lot of suplexes. They've got a lot of power bombs where the guys are dropped straight on their head and their neck. Those moves were common in the Japanese wrestling culture.
Okay.
The guys are very much respected for putting their bodies on the line. Not that the American wrestlers aren't. They just do it in a safer way, in a safer environment.
Yeah.
This game also featured the infamous Tokyo Dome with the long entrance ramp to the ring. Classic. Go back and check that out. The Creator Wrestler, phenomenal. Same style Creator Wrestler as No Mercy, as WrestleMania 2000. It came right in between those games, so very similar. It had a mask editor, because it has a lot of Mexican and Japanese wrestlers.
It had a mask editor?
Had a mask editor.
I didn't know
so you
that.
can change the design of the masks and then change all the different colors of the different layers of the mask. It had over 1,000 moves. I definitely challenge you. I definitely recommend you go back and play this title. Check it out for yourself. You can buy it on eBay. $20, $30, $40, you can get a copy of it. And you're going to need a little Japanese adapter that you can get also for about the same price, $20 to $40.
What's the name of the adapter? Because people are going to need it, and it says somewhere on the sticker, it says like Ultra something.
I think the one that I have is called Ultra 64, but
Ultra 64,
I don't think there's an exact manufacturer.
Okay.
When I was younger, I had a different version than the one I have now. It wasn't the same. It was also more expensive back in the day.
Yeah.
It was like, I believe it cost me upwards of $70 to $100 when I got the adapter itself.
Okay.
To import the game was about the same price back then too.
Yeah.
Because it was a $60, $70 game, but you were importing it, shipping, all that stuff. So I got Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, and that adapter, I spent, probably close to $150, $200, somewhere around there, just to play that game. Now, I had the other Japanese wrestling games for the N64 as well. So I'd invest a lot of money. That money turned into a lot of investment in time. And, you could argue the menus are in Japanese, but you can go to YouTube.
Sure.
You can go to Wikipedia. back in the day, again, signing on to AOL, we were just printing out the translation of the menus.
Chat rooms.
Chat rooms, yeah.
Yeah, ASL?
What's a chat room?
I know, right?
So we would just print out the menus in English online that people shared. And through repetition, we were able to build up the memory to know where the Creator Wrestler was, where the exhibition was, where the tournaments were.
Right.
And it became fairly easy. Much different when you go to the Japanese PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 3 entries. They're much more detailed. There are a lot more options. And at the time, it was a lot easier to navigate the N64, especially because, again, it's developed by a world-class developer in hockey. And it just felt natural.
Absolutely.
It felt good. It even had some WCW guys in there. You had like Big Van Vader. Awesome. He wasn't in the WWF entries, and it was great to play as him. And that, for example, just using Vader, some of these American stars that crossed over to Japan, Stan Hansen, John Laurinaitis, Johnny Ace, these guys were brutal competitors.
Right.
And you get to play as them, and you get to play as them at their best. Some of those guys weren't really at their best in the U.S. So Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, developed by Aki, #1, best wrestling game of all time, in my opinion. And again, the challenge goes out for somebody to step up to the plate and bring us a modern wrestling game that delivers as much fun, that will deliver an outpouring of passion from us, the fans, the 8-bit jobbers, the internet wrestling community. I want to get behind a wrestling game. So 8-bit jobber community, if you have a wrestling game that is not in our top 5, let us hear about it on Twitter at 8-bit jobbers. We would love to take your comments and your suggestions into consideration. We'll talk about them on future episodes of the show. We'll talk about them with you. And I'm really looking forward to doing more with this, Chris. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to hear other people's opinions too and their options, because I'm positive that there are some titles out there that we are just absolutely forgetting about and skipping over. I have to admit, before you and I were friends, and before that you and I had played this just a few weeks back, unless I had played this like for even just a few minutes, literally at your old house in the suburbs, the other suburb, I've never played any import game at all, let alone an import wrestling game. So I didn't even know that I didn't know that this brand existed. I didn't know that there were games that played similarly to WrestleMania 2000 or WWE or WWF No Mercy outside of the States.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably even go as far. I mean, look,
I think the average wrestling game or wrestling fan probably are in the same shoes. They just didn't know.
I didn't know, and I didn't even know. Granted, maybe it was how I was raised. Maybe I was pretty sheltered. I didn't even know that there was even wrestling outside of the U.S. that was this popular, let alone in Japan. So had I known, even if I had known that this existed and I wanted to play this, I wouldn't. There is no way that I wouldn't be able to afford this when I was younger. So this brings us to another point.
I stole my dad's credit card.
Oh, well, okay, then hey, you did what you had to do.
Was that the point you were going to make?
I
didn't have any money either.
I don't know. I certainly did not have any. I don't think any of us had any money at the time. No. But so thank you, Mr. Luttrell, for buying Dave here, or at least volunteering. Or
he knew, but it's kind of like he was voluntold that he was buying it, and I had his credit card.
Right.
The rest is history.
Your dad's awesome.
Yeah, he is.
Can we please talk about the ease of availability now? I mean, listen, even if you're not internet savvy, you can ask anybody. Make yourself an eBay account or an Amazon account, some type of account.
You can find these games.
You can find the entire virtual pro wrestling series online anywhere. Yeah. Now, the import adapters to play import games, those might be maybe slightly, just a little bit more difficult to come along. But please get an adapter, get the import games.
Yeah, we'll post some links. We'll give you some links on our Twitter.
Yeah.
The adapter, again, is kind of hard to come by. You'll see a few of them pop up on eBay, a few of them pop up on Amazon. They come and go. But absolutely, do some searches. We'll give you some links. And if you want to jump in and play with us and check out some of these games, again, we'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
So here we are, Chris, wrapping up our first episode of 8-Bit Jobbers.
8-Bit Jobbers. First episode is done. I had a good time. I think this went along really well.
Yeah.
I don't care about whatever script or crap or whatever we were trying to follow before.
Yeah.
This went good.
Yeah.
I think you and I talking together.
Yeah.
And looking at each other, and sure, we had
Stop
some
looking
notes,
at me.
but we were having. I know
Stop
it's
looking
kind
at
of
me.
weird. Imagine we were looking at each other like this, but while
Yeah.
remember a few minutes ago we were trying to do this with the lights off. That's kind of weird.
Oh, that's creepy.
I think I had a good time though, and we need to do this again, and I think we are going to do this again.
Absolutely. Let us know your ideas for the show. If you got a game you'd like us to play, you'd like us to review.
Yes.
If you got a topic you'd like us to discuss. Eventually, we see this growing.
Yes.
Just as the 8-Bit Jobber community can grow with it, the show will grow and evolve every day and every year.
Yes.
So again, I am Dave.
And I am Chris.
We are the 8-Bit Jobbers, and we are your destination for video game inspired wrestling conversations,
Nostalgia,
debates, rants.
ideas, recognitions, and also controversy.
That's right. So until our next episode of 8-Bit Jobbers, we are going to leave you with a song dedicated to one of our favorite current wrestlers who we'd love to see in one of these old school games. We should go and create Dean Ambrose in Virtual Pro Wrestling.
We
too.
absolutely can, and I think that we should.
That's a great idea.
Great.
We should go do that right
Let's
now.
do that.
All right. Until next time. Thanks for listening.